That's great. Hey, we're gonna do an impromptu interview.
Yeah.
Grab a mic. Grab a mic.
Yeah, but I ain't got no script.
That's okay. We'll just talk.
Okay?
Now you worked with Walter Lantz.
Not Head and Splinter.
Not Head and Splinter. Those are the two nephews of, or is it the nephew and niece? I could never.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the nephew and niece of Woody Woodpecker.
Oh, yeah.
And
Gosh.
and who, when you were doing it, who was doing the voice of Woody?
Oh, that's Gracie.
Grace Stafford.
That was
Mrs.
that was Walter Lantz's wife, Gracie.
Right.
Nice lady.
Wow.
Yeah. She and her father used to travel doing little shows at nightclubs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
As a comedy team or as a dance team? As a
No,
singers?
they would sing and do comedy.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
How did she meet Walter? Any idea?
I don't know how they met, but Walter had a wonderful brother in New York, Michael, who was a great sculptor.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow, I didn't know that.
yeah. And when I went to Yugoslavia, to Zagreb, to a film festival, Walter and Gracie came. And Walter said, June, we've rented a car. We'd like to go through the entire area of Yugoslavia. Would you like to go with us? So I did.
Oh,
We became good friends.
oh, wonderful.
You know, all the classic people that I worked with, Chuck Jones,
Mm-hmm.
Fritz Freely, Walter Lantz, Jay, we got to know the families. It was different, you know. Now you work for somebody and it's very cold, but in those days, everybody loved each other.
Now, there's one animation star of today named John Lasseter, and I think you've known him for a few minutes.
Yeah. Well,
How far back do you guys? I should explain. For those of you who don't know, John Lasseter was the creative head of Pixar. He was the initial creative head of Pixar, and his pictures were so successful that Pixar and Disney's merged as corporations. And John is one of the largest shareholders of the entire outfit, and he's the creative head of not only Pixar, but also Walt Disney Animation, and he's a special advisor to the parks and I think just about everything creative at Disney.
and we were on the board of governors together at the Motion Picture Academy.
That's right, and so was I.
I first met John when he was a student at Cal Arts.
Say that again, you first met John when?
I met John Lasseter when he was a student at Cal Arts, because I did a lot of narrating of kids.
Right, right. Now, as a student, was he a high achiever or was he just a slovenly slacker?
He was a charming young man.
Uh-huh.
And he won a Student Academy Award,
Uh-huh.
and then he submitted to the short film branch and won an Oscar there. And that's what started
Wow.
it all.
And then next year, what did he do?
I don't know what he did.
He won another Student Academy Award the next year. He got 2 Student Academy
Yeah.
Awards. Yeah.
Well, no, the first one was the student, the second was the short film.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I stand corrected as always.
You have corrected
That's
Steve.
because
That's why I'm not sitting down.
Because Donnie, you didn't know him, I did.
That's true. I met him when he started at Disney's in 1980, I guess.
That was,
And he was developing a show called, what was the name
The
of
black hole.
that? No. No, that was the
Year before, I'm sorry.
That was the financial department.
And I sure took
The
everything.
Brave Little Toaster, which
Oh,
was in
the
development for many, many years, and finally, he developed another little thing with Glenn Keane doing the animation that we used very early computer animation, and they used that as kind of their, John used it as his access to heading up north. He left Disney's in Burbank and went up north, and the rest is history, or animation history anyway. And speaking of animation history, there's some question as to which is your first work in animation, because you've done so much stuff over the years, right?
the first thing I did, I think with Walt Disney, I did Lucifer the Cat in Cinderella.
Cinderella, that's that cat that goes after all the mice who are saying, Cinderella, Cinderella, and you're the mean
But
cat
then
in that.
I did Witch Hazel at Disney
In a Donald Duck
in
cartoon.
Trick or Treat.
Right.
Trick or
Right.
Treat. And then my agent called a few months later and he said, would you like to work at Warner Brothers? And I said, sure. You know, I had started in radio. I never thought of doing voices for cartoons. And he said, you're going to meet Chuck Jones. And I said, Chuck who? I didn't know who Chuck Jones was. I went into the studio, I looked at the script, and it was Witch Hazel.
A character with the same name as a character you had just voiced over at Disney's.
And the same actress, and almost the same voice.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't have the hubris to say, how the hell can you do this? But Mark Davis, you know Mark.
Sure, Mark,
Very
one of the 9 old men of animation, and
Very famous
former ASIFA board member.
Yeah, and I asked Mark, I said, how come you called her Witch Hazel? Because that's an alcohol, analgesic rub of some kind. And I said,
Like Mandrake or something.
yeah, and they couldn't copyright it. So
Because it was a product found in
Yeah.
nature.
Yeah, so I asked Mark, I said, how could you call it Witch Hazel? You can't copyright it. He said that was the favorite nurse's name, Hazel. And so they wanted a joke made out of it.
Oh. okay,
Yeah, that's
okay.
how it got.
Do you know who that nurse was?
What?
Do you know who that nurse was, named Hazel?
No.
Okay, well, the nurse at Disney's, correct me if I'm wrong, was Hazel George.
Was that her?
That was her name. And she wrote songs under the name Gil George. So you see a lot of songs at Disney's written by somebody named Gil George, that's really Hazel George. And Walt and she were very close because Walt had a very bad back problem, as you probably know. He had that polo accident in 1938 or something.
Seven-ish?
Yeah, probably 37. I think it was probably while Will Rogers was still alive.
They have managed to copyright the GMO witch hazel, unfortunately.
Right. But anyway, so Walt had this back problem, and so he needed massages at the end of the workday, and she was in charge of giving him those massages. I'm sure it was a very above board
Yeah.
situation.
Love the firehouse,
No, I'm not implying anything, but it sounds funny as I say it. Yes, Bob.
We learned June's first cartoon. What was your very first professional job?
In radio, probably.
Doing what?
Your first professional job is the question.
In radio?
Uh-huh.
Just
Or in any?
That was in Springfield, Massachusetts. I was 12 years old.
Oh.
And I did one show, and then I realized, you know, when I told my mother and father when I was 6 years old, I wanted to be an actor, they thought, oh my God, you know.
Uh-huh.
But I used to impersonate everybody. They'd take me to the opera. They were very esoteric people. And I would impersonate everybody. So my teacher had a show. And so I was on her radio show at 12. And then they had a group of people who worked every week on a radio show. And I had the hubris to call them and say, hey, look, I can do all these things. Could you hire me? So I got $5 a week, and I did the show, and then came out here.
Oh, do you remember the name of the show?
No, I have no idea.
And they didn't make you sweep the floors or anything,
No,
too, the way
no,
Smiley
no.
Burnett had to? Okay. Now, you know, it sounds as though there must have been something in the water in your hometown. What was the name of it again? Your hometown? Springfield,
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Because when you were a kid, there was a famous actress from your town, right? A dancer.
Yes, yeah, Eleanor Paul. That's why my mother said, oh, she wants to be an actor, she's gonna have dancing lessons. So fortunately, I got pneumonia when I was
Fortunately.
Do you, I've never asked you this before, do you remember an ad campaign done with cartoons for a product called Flit?
No,
Remember Quick Henry the Flit? Do you remember those cartoons?
no.
Dr. Zeus.
Yeah, they were early commercial advertisements done by a cartoonist whose name was Ted Geisel, but he used the name Dr. Seuss.
Well, he came from Springfield, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
He came from the same town, and they named Forest Park, where we used to go ice skating and things, they named it after Dr. Seuss.
Oh, did they really?
Yes.
Do they call it Geisel Park, or do they call it Seuss Park, or
I don't know.
if
what
I
they
ran the
call it,
zoo park?
But they named it after him, yeah.
Great.
Mr. McMurray. Yeah.
Wow. Well,
How many voices have you done? How many total?
how many voices?
Have I done? Oh, God.
No, don't get a headache, that's all right.
Let's start with 15 or 20.
All right.
And then go up, okay.
Right.
Like-
Your resume goes on forever, of course.
Yeah.
I like what Doss Butler used to say. He said, I only have a limited number of voices, but I've got thousands of characters. He said, there are only so many placements you could do with your voice, but you could play almost an unlimited number of characters. Who were some of your favorite actors that you looked up to over the years? I mentioned Doss, and I'm thinking he might be one.
You mean voiceover actor?
Yeah,
Oh.
that you
Paul-
enjoyed working with.
And Paul Frees.
Paul
He
Frees.
was brilliant.
Okay. Does everybody know who Paul Frees is?
Mr. Disneyland.
You know, he used to do, who was that Hungarian actor? Anyway, he had a show. Huh?
Is that from? Rodham. No?
I can't
Fine.
remember what his name was, but he did a show with him, but he had to go to Europe for a vacation. And before he left to Paul, who could impersonate anybody, he said, please take care of my voice.
Oh.
Yeah,
Great.
he was very clever.
And Paul had a hit record as Peter Lorre, too.
That's the one I was thinking.
Oh, the Hungarian Peter Lorre,
Yeah.
Lowenstein.
You know, when I first came out here, I was only 18, but I wrote children's stories. I was on the air Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I called myself Lady Make-Believe. And it went through the school. The schools loved it. So the kids would go to the auditorium every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and listen to Lady Make-Believe. And some of the ones,
They get out of class and go to assembly and listen to you.
yeah.
That's a great school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of the, 5 of the ones are on tape now. I've forgotten the company who did it.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
There are 5
Was it
of them.
related to Universal or something? Because June found 5 of her old scripts about 10 years ago or so, and recorded them and produced them, and they were picked up by,
By a studio, yeah.
one of the big studios, like MCA Universal or something.
Yes,
And they released them, and you had a very smart clause in there that if they weren't still available after a certain number of years, the rights would revert back to you.
I still own them, yeah.
And they reverted back to you, which is great. I like that. That's a happy Hollywood story.
Did you have an organ background, you know, like some of them did? Was there a funny little organ? No?
Oh, when you did these initially,
Yeah.
did you have musical accompaniment?
No,
No?
no,
Did you have a theme song at the beginning?
only a recorded song.
Do you remember
Yeah.
what it was?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay, we'll have to write a new one.
It's one of these things that you get at the library
Uh-huh.
that's universally owned.
Yeah. Okay, a needle drop, as somebody was saying earlier. Any questions here? Yes, sir.
Could we get Jimmy to maybe tell us like what a typical recording session would have been like working on a Sylvester and Tweety cartoon or just some sort of Warner Brothers cartoon? I've heard like that they would go to sound stages or something.
Yeah, the question was, what would a typical recording session be at Warner Brothers when you first started working there? When you first started there, were you in the studios or
Yes, it was in the studio.
on a sound stage?
It was a little studio upstairs, projection room 14. You walked up a pair of stairs.
Was this in Termite Terrace on
No,
that?
no, it was at
On the Warner lot?
Right now, I didn't work with Termite there. They'd already moved
Yeah.
to Warner Brothers, and it was with Chuck Jones. And I recorded, the first one was Broomstick Bunny, where I played with Hazel. And Mel Blanc, of course, was Bugs, and did all the other characters. He got all the
Credit.
the credit,
You got sole credit.
all
So
credit.
you go in and do 3 characters in a cartoon,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the film would say, voice characterizations, Mel Blanc. No
Yeah.
mention of Doss Butler, or you, or B. Benaderet,
Yeah,
or whoever else
I
is
did
on it.
about 40 theatrical shorts for Chuck Jones, Fritz Freely, all the guys at Warner Brothers. That's where I started Granny with Fritz Freely.
And
And I'm still doing Granny. When I was too young to be a Granny, I was doing Granny. And now that I'm old enough to be a great Granny, I'm still doing Granny.
now, I should ask, when's the last time you recorded Granny for Warner Brothers?
The last recording?
Most recent?
Granny, for
Yeah,
Looney Tunes.
But when was that? A year ago? 6 months
No,
ago?
a couple of weeks ago.
A couple of weeks ago? All right, great.
Yeah,
And
I got my Emmy for Garfield, doing the lips. Yeah.
great, there's a question over here.
How did you come to work with Stan Freberg?
We were under contract at Capitol Records, doing all of their children's albums, because at that time, neither Warner's nor Disney had a record company, so we did all the voices, and that's how I got to work at Disney. He heard all the characters that I did, and that's how I got to do Lucifer. It's,
June?
yeah,
Just this last,
and that's
just
how I met Freberg.
last 4th of July, I'm driving on the way home and I heard this hilarious thing with Stan Freberg. I'm sure you're in it. It's this weird thing about the 4th of July, about America.
Yeah, oh yeah.
What is that called?
Stan Freberg proudly presents the United States of America,
Yeah.
Part 1.
That's right. June, are you in that?
Yes. Oh,
Yes.
June's definitely
I
in
think
that.
I heard the witch in there, or
Yeah.
something like that.
Oh, June does multiple characters
Yeah.
in
Oh.
that.
Or a
The
little
first thing
boy,
we
the
did
boy.
was St. George the Dragonet and Little Blue Riding Hood.
Now, St. George and the Dragonet was a takeoff, of course, on Dragnet, which is
Yeah.
a popular
Jack
series,
Webb.
Jack Webb. And he allowed the music to be used.
Yes.
And it was a big seller. It was such a big seller that you guys, you and Doss and Stan and Peter Lind, who were on the record, flew out to New York City, right?
Yes, we did the Ed Sullivan Show. It was,
You did the Ed Sullivan Show.
yeah,
That's pretty great. Those of you who don't know, the Ed Sullivan Show is a very popular show that everybody watched on Sunday nights. It's the same show that introduced,
I've done it
that
twice.
made stars out of the Beatles. And
I did it twice.
Elvis.
I was,
Oh, really?
yeah,
What was the other time?
I went to Europe with Forrest Tucker and with some
And
girls to entertain
Kathy,
the troops. The war was over, but we still entertained, and when we came back, we did the Ed Sullivan Show.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, what did you do in that act? Because in the act was a young woman who was exchanging letters with Bing Crosby at the time, Kathy Grant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was there, and she said, "I've got to be home by Sunday because I'm doing a show the next day." It was the Millionaire, I think, and it was one that my husband had written.
Oh, really?
Wasn't that a strange coincidence?
Wow, yeah, Hobart Donovan, the writer.
Hobart Donovan,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow, that's great. The Millionaire was a show that I think Paul Frees did the voice
Yes, yeah, he did.
of the millionaire himself, and
And his name was?
The late
well,
John
John
John Beresford Tipton III. My name is Michael B. Anthony. For years I've worked for
Yes.
the eccentric millionaire John Beresford Tipton III,
Yeah.
whose wish is to give a certified check in the sum of $1 million to persons he has never even met. There's a concept for a series, except nowadays they'd actually do it.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't have to pay the actors or Hobart to write the script. They just go out and document the people just going down the drain with the million that they get. But if they led a happy life, it probably wouldn't make the air. Yes?
When you were doing Rocky and Bullwinkle show, did you get to ad-lib, and did they record a lot of ad-lib when you were doing it? You and who was doing the Bullwinkle?
The question, two questions. When you did Rocky and Bullwinkle, was there a lot of ad-libbing, and who did the voice of Bullwinkle?
Bill Scott was the voice of Bullwinkle. He was the head writer. He, as a co-producer with Jay, he wrote all of the Bullwinkle segments, the very satirical ones with the funny puns at the end. He played Bullwinkle, and of course I was Rocky and Natasha. And oh, by the way, they're not letting me do Natasha on this 5-minute short. They're hiring somebody else to impersonate me.
What?
Can you believe that they are?
Oh, no.
doing
I think we should pick it. What do you
something
think?
Yeah. Is there some place we could complain to? Is this Universal?
else? No, it's Dreamworks.
Dreamworks.
So I-
Dreamworks
I asked
SKG.
all my friends, object, say June Foray should do her original voice. She's having somebody impersonate me. As Natasha Dowdy. What they're doing when I started it.
Wow. Yeah, you have the most pure Pennsylvanian accent of anyone in the world.
Pennsylvania was just as real as frostbite fall.
Well, I think, other than this little glitch, it's an amazing career, and I think there's a way, perhaps ways of overcoming this glitch too.
I think it's better than reading the script.
Yes, yes. Folks, June Foray. Happy birthday. Everybody sing along.